you have enough people that you sit down with go, hey man, do you realize like nothing you just described to me is normal, whatever that word means, you
Yeah.
know? And I'm like, I guess you're right. They're like, you have got to start sharing and talking about some of these things. And I think, even in your business life, you could probably relate to a lot of things I just described there. We are in a weird time, and you can probably tell me a lot more, uh, which is, I'm really excited about these insights. But we're in a weird time when it comes to acquisitions and preparing for acquisitions, or more importantly, people not preparing for those acquisitions.
Oh, well, that's the norm.
So jump in here. What do you do, and like how have you assisted? And you've got quite the resume, so I'll let you do it so I don't mess it up.
So we're starting. This is the start, is it?
Yeah. I
No
do. I
worries.
usually do intros in post.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So, yeah, look, not too dissimilar to you, Quinton. I've got an interesting background. I'm actually a mechanical engineer. Was my what I studied at uni, and I got involved in engineering, and I love figuring out how things work. And yeah, I've got an engineering mind, and it's systematic and it's structured and it's processed and sequential and all the rest of it. And I'm pretty comfy with numbers, but I'm not great at the details, which sounds counterintuitive or even contradictory, I guess. But that's my background, and I got into consulting and yeah, management consulting, and I worked in a consulting company, and we're just like any other management consultant, yeah, just trying to get projects with all the big corporates. But I was in a small town sort of environment where all the we were competing with all the big city consultants coming in from Sydney and Melbourne, and I was doing some extra business studies. I was completing my MBA, and with my engineering background, I focused on the MBA to do finance and marketing because that's where I was weak. And I was saying to the guys, I said, we should be doing, uh, our consulting. We should be targeting the SMEs here in Adelaide because it's a smaller town, and it was just full of SMEs and businesses that are growing from the grassroots up. And they didn't have all of that corporate knowledge, and all that corporate knowledge that you learn in the core in that big company environment, you take for granted. And all that knowledge and the structure and the planning and the disciplines and the frameworks that you use in a corporate environment, uh, applying them directly are just overkill to an SME. But applying the principles to an SME, um, you know, they work ideal. And yeah, the business I was with said, no, you're an idiot. You've got no idea, that'll never work. And you won't be able to make the money. You won't be able to charge the fees we want to charge. And because I was, just in my early 30s, so I was young and dumb and sort of didn't know any better. So I had to figure it out for myself and have a go. Um, and I said to my wife, I said, look, give me a year at this, and if I can't make it work, I'll go get a real job. And I've just hit 60 and haven't had a real job in it. So that's kind of the background. Before that, I worked in bike shops. I worked in push bike shops because I'm a mad keen cyclist, and I wanted to get that out of my system before I went to uni. My first job was at McDonald's. So I was in McDonald's in the late 70s, one of the first McDonald's in Australia. Look, that was an absolute buzz. It was great for growing up. All my other mates were working in supermarkets, putting cans on shelves, and I was getting effectively some management training. I didn't know it at the time, but learning systems and processes and structure, it was a real buzz. So there's a reverse CV, I guess, going backwards.
Right? And it's funny, as soon as you said that, about McDonald's in the 70s, I mean, they invented, the most efficient form of food slash food delivery at the time that the world has ever seen. So the first question that I wanted to ask here based on that was like, you were seeing the cutting edge of the practical application of the systems and processes and how it's actually applied rather than just the theory. How did that affect you here?
So yeah, it look, I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm so glad I had the experience because I was like, this is the 70s, right? So I can probably say this out now without any ramifications. But yeah, I was 14 when I was working there. I told them I was 15. I remember, we used to have, well, they used to call them crew parties, and I went to a crew party and I was telling the guys, it's my birthday today. And they're going, you're 16? You're not 16, because I looked young. Even for my age, I looked young. They're going, you just turned 15, didn't you? Yeah, type of thing. So I did some growing up there. It was fantastic. And I remember I got paid $2.72 an hour. And yeah, so this is what it is. But yeah, look, we had stations, and you when you started working there, one of the first jobs you got is that you're on dressing. You're dressing the burgers, and you have to do this. And I remember it was really, the training was, do it like this, don't do it like this. You have to do it like this. There's two pickles, and there's no more than two pickles. It's not one pickle, it's two pickles, type of thing. And they were rigid and disciplined and consistent, and you did that, and then you were able to, you'd get up to the fries, and then you'd get up to the chicken, and the really good guys, the experienced guys, were able to do the burgers, patties, type of thing. But each station had its own training, and you basically got qualified, or certainly, it wasn't an official certification, but you were recognized that you were able to perform the task at each of the stations. And then, afterwards, when the restaurant shut, and again, you had a complete process that you had to follow to get everything done. But man, it was fun. When we worked the close, everyone just had a whole lot of fun. They were good times. I remember I used to ride my bike, and it was a long way to ride to work, but sometimes Dad would come and pick me up. And he'd love it, because if he picked me up after the close, I'd bring him out a hot apple pie and a couple of pieces of chicken that were left over, and he always thought that was a treat. So yeah, good times.
So can you think of maybe one or two specific things? Like I said, or like you had mentioned, you didn't realize it necessarily at the time, but a couple years afterward, was there a point that you realized, like a definitive point that you realized, like, oh wow, that was at a minimum, right? Maybe it didn't give you the training on systems and processes, but it got you to see the practical application of it in retrospect. Do you have a point where you're like, this was a thing?
I'm a slow learner, Quinton. So for me, it was a long time after. And look, I started in business for myself after I left the engineering, and what have you, and left the consulting. I started in myself in 1999. And that's when I first read Gerber's book about systems and structures. And I was really immersing myself in business development, and consuming everything I could about business development. And it was then that I started hearing all these stories about, McDonald's, the masters of systemization. I was able to go, that's what happened. And I could connect and relate back to what I did and what I experienced. And I put it together. And I guess that's when I first learned from a pointing of wanting to educate and understand, if I can add that clarity, about systems. Because all through the engineering world and job, I was involved in systems and procedures, but just at the other end of having to comply, and it just felt bureaucratic, and you had to do this, and these are the rules. My mindset is that rules were just made to be broken, and it was easier to ask for forgiveness than ask permission. But when I went and worked for myself, and started my own business, and I was learning all this other stuff, I learned the power of systemization and systemizing a business. And it's in the small business context as opposed to the corporate bureaucratic context, and applying them and learning to introduce them and educate business owners in, this is the way you want to do it, and do it in a way that makes it fun and actually makes it easier for the people doing it, rather than it feeling bureaucratic and they just want to bust out of it approach. And that's when it all came together for me. So it was like a big circle coming back on itself, maybe even like a spring, because there's been a couple more laps since. But yeah, sometimes these things do take a while to land and resonate in, when all the gears are grinding away in the head.
Oh, 100%. And I've told it in the past year, but for me, the moment for me retrospectively, finding out, like, or realizing, like, oh, I actually, like, acquired that brand, and acquired, oh, and I, consulting for equity. Oh, wow, wait a minute. I literally went on Amazon searched a book like How to Buy a Business, and one of the first books that came up was this very little known book by a very successful acquisitionist, Arturo Enriquez, The Dirty Little Secrets of How to Buy a Business That Everyone is Scared to Tell You. Read that book, and then that was me realizing like, oh, this isn't like necessarily new because I had already like been doing some of these different things, right?
I thought I was making it up all along, and there's even a book written on it.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's one thing led to another, but it's also the way my brain works. Like I naturally, because I'm so maybe scatterbrained or ADHD, if you can't tell by my speech pattern here, I realize like, okay, I'm gonna have to take what's in front of me, right? Break it down into either incremental blocks or steps or whatever, whatever you want to refer to them, and go, okay, I need to do this because I can see the information better. I can make better educated decisions. And I've really applied that to, I mean, after realizing that, I applied that to like folding laundry and different things that I do like on day-to-day basis, which has really in a weird way helped. But we have a so-called silver wave happening, whereas the most entrepreneurial generation pretty much in human history now is getting to the retirement age. And I think this might be where you guys come in, because a lot of these people don't have succession plans, right? And didn't maybe think about making them. And the world we live in now is very different than it was when they were starting out. So they maybe, they weren't like, why would you be thinking when you're 32 starting a roofing company, or 25 if you started younger in a trade, like, oh, I need to build this out so that I can sell it 50 years. You know what I mean? Like, why would they do that? What do you see as some of the biggest blockages, mental blockages, right? Because you have to make the decision if you're getting ready to sell. And it has to be a mental decision first, and then you can take action steps towards it. What do you see as like the biggest mental block for people when it comes to getting that ready?
I think, look, this is something I have thought a lot about, Quinton. I've thought a lot about why people don't do it. And when you study sales and sales psychology and process and what have you, you learn that, people don't buy stuff just for the sake of it. They buy it because it makes them feel better, because they're running away from something or they're running to something. They want a problem solved. It doesn't matter how big the problem is. If I'm buying a jumper, I want to look good, or I want to be warm, or what have you, is the problem I want solving, and I want it to go with my other outfits, and I want to look good, feel good type of thing. They're the problems I want solved, and so I go buy a jumper. And I've got a party or I want to go to on Saturday night or what have you, so I need to solve it now. When it comes to exit planning, most people are only going to sell, especially that baby boomer, that silver wave you're talking about, that generation, there's thousands and thousands of them that are going to sell in the next few years, which means it's going to become a competitive market, and the success rate is even more under pressure. But for those people who are thinking, they're just assuming I've built a business, therefore it's worth something. Firstly, they're deluded a lot of the time, because the stats actually show us that only about 1 in 5 businesses actually sell. 1 in 5 SME businesses actually sell. And that's because they don't do the planning and they don't make their business attractive to be sold. They don't address or mitigate the risks of buying their business. They've been running it for 20 or 30 years. Everything's done out of their head often. They know how it's done. They haven't trained everyone. They haven't implemented the systems we're talking about. They're control freaks, and they're going, well, I've made a good wage. Makes me good money. Why wouldn't they want to buy it? Well, they wouldn't want to buy it because as soon as we take you out of the picture, the business is worth nothing, because everything is in your head. And why don't they address that and plan for it? Because what I've come to realize is they're not feeling any pain about it today. They're not feeling any pain that they need to solve today. There's a pain tomorrow that they're not aware of. And when they do become aware of it, it's too late, because they're halfway down the process and everyone's bailed, or they're looking to run away. And if they're only ever going to sell one business, excuse me, if they're only ever going to sell one business, then they really should be getting in help, and instead of trying to do everything themselves, to show for someone to sherpa them, to guide them, to project manage, whatever you want to say, but to guide them through the process of what they have to do to make sure they'll be one of the 20% of businesses that actually get sold. And but it's tomorrow's pain that they're not feeling today. So it's not urgent. They go, yeah, that's important, but it's not urgent. So, I'll put that off tomorrow. And when they do that, they're costing themselves a lot of money. But the problem is they can't see how much it's costing them.
It's crazy because actually, when I was going through your website, which I do recommend everybody check out, like 100% Succession Plus, you really need to check it out. So Accession.plus, literally wherever you are in the world. There's an AU, there's a UK, there's a .com. I mean, they got them all. They have a US base, right? But one thing that really caught my attention, and it was a statistic that I had never heard before, because I think, especially if you're in this world, or if you've dove in this world or done research in this world, I think you realize the massive imbalance that I mentioned earlier between buyers and sellers. What I did not ever hear, and I've never even heard anyone mention it before, is 55% of businesses sell unplanned, right? In other words, they are motivated sellers because of divorce, death, and I think everyone is talking about retirement, but I don't think anyone is talking about that 45-year-old that has a divorce, or that 56-year-old that has a spouse pass away. 55% due to unplanned exits, that's not small.
It's crazy, isn't it?
What can someone do? Because unplanned is unplanned. And if it was planned, it wouldn't be unplanned, right? But what can someone do today, like health insurance, but for a business, start that process of mitigating so that if something does become unplanned and comes up, which is business in general, they're prepared?
What can you do about it? That's the important thing, right? Because if we take it at face value and go, look, 55% of business exits are unplanned, that's the owner got hit by a bus, or the death, the divorce, the disability or something. I know a guy who fell off his ladder doing some DIY at home, literally fell off his ladder, crippled, he's now crippled, broke his back and he can't work. So what do you do to plan that? Well, the first one is get some life insurance. If the next one is, hey, have I got other shareholders in my business? Have I got a shareholders agreement? Like, what happens if you and I are shareholders in a business, Quinton? And typically what happens, the norm is that we go, well, we're in business together, therefore we own 50% each. I fall off the ladder doing some DIY at home because I'm cleaning my gutters. I didn't have anyone brace the ladder. The ladder falls out from under me, and I'm history. I've got a will. Everything in my will goes to my wife. She goes, there you go. You're now in business with my wife. Now, my wife's a teacher, and she's a damn good teacher, and she's highly respected in her profession and what she knows about, but she knows nothing about how to run a business. And you don't want to be in business with my wife because A, she works big hours in her teaching role, and B, you don't want to interfere in because she doesn't know how to run our business that we've been doing successfully for so long. So what we want is a shareholders agreement and some insurance in place, that the insurance kicks in that pays my family, what my shares are worth, what the business is worth. And then the shares, there's an agreement there that the shares are transferred back to you as the other business owner, because my family my wife doesn't want to be involved in the business. She would much rather the money. And, let's face it, she may have even pushed me off the ladder. But we won't touch that. But I'm joking, of course. But she doesn't want to be in the business. She doesn't want the business. The money would be most helpful for her to continue living and maintaining the bills that she needs to. Fortunately, in my case, my kids are growing up. Our kids are growing up. That's not an issue. We don't need to get them through school. But there's the first layer of protection we want, right? Some sort of insurance where the business gets what it needs to, it's going to be a setback, but the business will get what it needs and my family will get what they need. And we've got all the legal agreements in place. So there's something you want to do. Now, the next thing you might go, well, actually, Darryl's a key guy. And because, you might go, well, Quinton's job was this and Darryl's job was that. We don't cross over, but we've both got our areas of expertise. Well, I've also a key man, so you probably want some key man insurance in the business to go, well, if something happens to Darryl, then there's some insurance pays out that gives us some money that we can go and recruit a replacement. And hopefully Darryl's skills aren't so unique that he's irreplaceable. If they are, then the next layer of protection we want to put in place and risk mitigation is, well, let's make sure that everything that Darryl does is documented, even though he's an owner, a shareholder in the business. Let's give him a job description that captures exactly what he does. And let's put in all of the job description, because we both read the E-Myth, we systemized the business and we put processes and the whole business was automated and we used modern tech and AI. So we automated the business and we've got systems and processes in place. And because they're all documented, we can train someone in how to do them. So now we've mitigated the risk of my skills by putting a system in place and an ability to train someone in the processes that I followed. Now, that's if I'm a key man. Hopefully, we were savvy enough to get me out of any operational roles in the business. And I was, well, I say just, but I was just involved in strategic and leadership and management roles. So I wasn't on the tools in any way. I wasn't a marketing manager. I wasn't a sales director. I was just in overall strategy and business design. And again, the key man insurance in that role is going to be easier to find someone with those. Industry specific would be nice, but generic strategic skills. So, there's some ideas on what you can do to de-risk in the situation of an unplanned exit.
I have pen and paper and I'm writing notes, and I sure hope people will either re-listen to this or take notes for themselves, because they're crazy not to. Because whether you need this because you want to retire in 5 years, or you need this, as mentioned earlier with the baby boomers, 30, 40 years from now, you're going to need it eventually, right? Businesses are either shut down or sold.
Let's face it, Quinton, in today's age, people, if they're not going to take notes. They're just going to get the transcript, whack it into ChatGPT and go, summarize this for me. That's what I do.
Fair enough, right? And they might even save time doing it. I know for me, I process better when I write down kind of the kinesthetically. But nevertheless, on that note of ChatGPT, I could only imagine like how many resources people have. So you mentioned there at the end, right? Hopefully someone had put in systems and processes in place while they could so that they're documenting things for these key men, or even the mundane roles as well. But I think oftentimes, as you mentioned also in the beginning, is that they never even considered that because everything's in their head, right? So like, let's say I'm really big on like step 1, 2, and 3. Like, let's break it down to like first principles, simple as possible. Everything is in my head. I'm a contractor or a house flipper. This is just random industry. What would you do, step 1, 2, and 3, to start the process of these systems and processes?
I would go, Darryl, help me out here, because as an engineer, you can't help yourself but model everything. And you've already got a 1, 2, 3 checklist in a nice, pretty picture that makes it easy for me to understand, haven't you? And I'd go, yes, sorry, I am a geek. That's me. You've seen right through me. That's what I did. So I've written a paper. It's on the website. We'll find a link for you to put in the show notes. It's called Eliminate Owner Dependence. And the reason I wrote it is I see a lot of people out there talking, hey, look, you got to make the business more resilient. You got to eliminate owner dependence. But no one's telling you how to do it. They're just telling you what to do, and they haven't given you any guidelines. So I wrote this paper. It's just a bit of a checklist, and it says, here's the things you need to do to get you on the path to eliminating owner dependence. First thing you need to do is model your business. You need a structure. You need a framework. What does the business look like? Let's turn it on its side to the normal corporate org chart. An org chart is Quinton does this, Darryl does that, Kevin does this, Charlie does that, Annie does this. It's an org chart where it's based around who does what. And I'm going, yeah, that's good when you've got 1,000 people in the business. What about when we've got 10 growing to 20, growing to 30? Then we need to go, let's stop. Let's have a look at everything that needs to be done. Let's map out the business and capture all of the whats. what needs to happen. So we'll create a functional chart based on all the what's. And I go, well, we need some finance, we need some marketing, we need some operations, we need some sales, we need some HR perhaps, we need some systems and IT information systems, where there's a strategy role, there's a whole lot of functions that need to be done. And once we map out all the functions, we might go, yeah, we've got 20 functions, but only 10 people. Just to give an example in an SME. So that means each person is doing 2 or 3 functions. Now that's okay, because as long as we map out everything that needs to happen, as the business grows, that list of things that need to happen doesn't grow. It stays the same. It's just how much time we spend in each one of those areas that makes a difference. So if we're product delivery is the same. Now, instead of one person doing it, we've got 50 people doing it. They're all just, replicating the same thing. So the first thing we need is a functional chart to map out the whole business. And the value of that is that it stops things from slipping through the cracks. Business owners go, Darryl, I'm spinning all these plates. I'm spending 100 hours a week just keeping the plates spinning. Or, fighting fires is another one. What they're saying is, I copied they'll say, yeah, I've got an organizational chart. I copied a corporate one. And I copied a corporate one and I didn't have a person in that role or a person in that role, which means it just got missed out. And so things are slipping through the cracks where things need to be done, but they're not assigned. And as they flare up, or there's no one else is doing it, it's down to me. So I have to go and do it. So that's what's happening. And that's why they're losing control of the business and they're working, too many hours. So number 1, create a functional chart. Number 2, define all of the jobs, all of the things that need to be done under each of those functions, and identify the workflow from one task to the next task. Now, you've now got a map of what needs to be done, and you've got a model and a map of how your business works. I'm not talking about how cash flows through your business. I'm talking about how work flows through your business. And that's what you want to understand as an operations. And then you get your CFO at the end to go, tell me how it works financially and how much can I afford to scale it and grow it and what have you. So we're eliminating owner dependence. So we've documented the business model, all the things that need to be done. Then we document and systemize it, how tasks flow from one to another. Because they're documented and we can train people on how to follow it. We can identify how we can improve it. We can identify the reporting steps. What information do we need to track to make sure that the process is on track and being followed? And now I've got the starting point for a nice little business that is not dependent on me, because it's all documented and I can train other people into doing it. It's no longer in my head, it's on paper specifically. So we've got a document, as I say, it's called Eliminate Owner Dependence. We'll put a link in the show notes, and you'll be able to download it, come to our website, download it, and it'll just give you a checklist or a cheat sheet on how to do what I just described.
Beautiful. One of the things that people can do when they do visit your website is kind of hop on a consultation call with you guys. Do you guys have specific requirements or a buy box, for lack of better words, for businesses to work with you, size, industry, or anything that you guys are selecting?
Where we're really good is businesses in that 2 million to 50 mil revenue bracket. Now, there's always businesses outside of that, but that's our sweet spot where we do most of our work. The owners are in their 50s or older. They've got more than 10 or 15 people in the business because it's an established business. They've got a management layer in the business. And so we can really help them with the getting off the tools themselves and getting themselves out of key roles. So I've given you the number of people, the size of the business in terms of revenue. The industry is pretty general. I'm going to say traditional businesses, i.e. we don't work with people who do property development and just flipping houses. That's not our gig. We'll do a little bit of SaaS, but SaaS type businesses is a different type of business model. We're more I call it traditional businesses. It's probably not the right term, but it's, shop fronts. It's where we've got a number of people and people doing stuff and having job roles. So, whether it be manufacturing or distribution or retail, even restaurants, it's where people are involved doing gigs and they've got different roles. They're the type of businesses we do our best work in.
Do you see that? I mean, naturally speaking, when you mention SaaS, for example, they're going to have a better idea because the entire business model is based on technology, which is usually based on processes and systems. Do you see specific industries that do better than others in terms of becoming ready for sale? Out of the list that is within your buy box, I should say. So, like whether it's a brick and mortar retail front or maybe a niche service business like an air conditioning or a plumbing or a manufacturing, kind of in that window of things.
I'm going to be difficult and say it's more down to the mindset of the owner. And part of that is, if you think of a teenage male, we've probably all known a teenage male. And if you watch them and you step back and you're at least in your 30s, you can see that progress, that development as a teenage male from 15, 16. They're defining themselves in the world, and they want to do everything themselves. They want to define their own roles. Their parents are idiots, type of mindset, and you have to do it all yourself. By the time you get to about 2021, it's amazing how much your parents have learned over those years and that they've grown up and matured. And, at 21, 22, your dad's not such a bad bloke and actually enjoy sitting down and having a beer with dad. It's okay. And you can do that from 18 in the UK. So, and yeah, so you just go through that journey. Business owners go through a similar journey of I have to do everything myself. I have to have all the answers. I'm not looking for help. I've got to do it all myself. And they'll do that from one person, making all the decisions up to about 10 people. And after about 10 people, that's about $1 million in revenue. If they can figure out how to make the switch after that, that's about the time they engage their first consultant, to give them some help, and they go, actually, how do I take this beyond $1 million? How do I create a management team, a management layer that I can delegate to, but not lose control of the business? How do I start to scale this to the next level? If I've got it to 1 mil, how do I get it to 5? Because or 3 is the next logical step. 1 to 3 to 10 to 30 to 100 type of thing. Is tripling. So yeah, it's more about the mindset of the owner and if they're willing to learn and adapt and grow and evolve themselves, because the fish rots from the head. Everything is a reflection of them in their business. And if they don't grow and evolve, the business won't.
I'm super curious to know where most of your clients come from. Meaning not necessarily like how you guys do your marketing, but more, by the way, Darryl does have a podcast. Go check that out as well. That'll be in the show notes, and that's probably how a few of your clients will come in. But more so, the reason why I'm asking this is because if you don't know you have a problem, you don't know you need to solve that problem. So do you usually get that 55% that have some kind of life advice, or excuse me, life event, and they're like, gosh, I got to figure this thing out quick, and they bring you guys on to do so? Or
It's a really good question, Quinton. It is a good question. When I started getting out of business coaching and focusing on exit planning, I thought I was making an easy choice because I can help you grow. Yeah, as a business coach is kind of, it's a vague open promise and it's hard to sell. But exit planning is saying, hey, look, when you're ready to sell, do you want to maximize your value? Do you want to exit? And most business owners go, well, my business is worth X. They'll pluck a number out of the sky of what they think it's worth and what they think it owes them. And just like we all do when we sell our house or our car, we have an inflated view of what it's worth. How we do, how do we find clients is we need to educate the market. We need to help business owners understand that, hey, look, only 1 in 5 sell. Unfortunately, entrepreneurs are optimists, and they all think that they're going to be the 1 in 5, right? So my business is much better than everyone else's, so I'm the 1 in 5, right? But you can't talk to 100 people and they all be the 1 in 5. So the way, what I do is I've got the podcast where it's all about educating them at what are some of the risks and what are some of the pitfalls. I produce a whole lot of content on LinkedIn to also similarly share to a similar audience, a different audience of what they can, just making them aware of what some of the issues are. We do webinars, but by far the biggest. Oh, look, I've also got a tool that we can put this in the show notes as well. We'll bombard them with content. It's called the Business Sellability Score. So this is just an indicator that we use, and it'll just help you. It'll take 4 minutes, no more. You don't need any specific information other than what's in your head already as a business owner. But it'll give you an indication of, is your business sellable? Is your business one of the 20% now in its current condition that is actually sellable? And there's about 30 questions we ask. And just looking at those questions will give you some insight as to the areas you need to be working on, because obviously there I'm looking for all the risks. So you can do that, and we'll give you a report. We'll produce a report at the end that you can just copy and paste and what have you, and be on your way. But by far, where we get the best leads or people wanting to work with us is when they're introduced, because they're introduced by someone who's been there or works with other people, and they go, this is a problem for you, right? You're coming up to an age where you want to be starting to think about your business. Have you exited a business before? And they go, no. And they go, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I'll just put it on the market. And they'll go, well, that won't work. You've got to get it ready. You've got to make sure that it's sellable. Do you want to talk to these guys? We'll introduce you to these guys if you like. Succession Plus, they know it inside out. They're systemized. They've got their own framework. They've got their own methodology. They practice what they preach. So go and see them, and they'll make sure that when you're ready to exit, your business will be exit ready, you'll be ready, and the numbers will add up to be the numbers that you want them to be. And they're the best recommendations we get from our, let's call them our partners, business partners out there.
Getting the number that they are looking to get. What are some of the key things that will provide the most leverage in terms of getting the valuation that a business owner is looking for, or even getting maybe a much higher multiple than current industries or industry standards, I should say?
So we've talked about a couple of them. What is someone buying when they're buying a business? They're buying a cash flow stream, effectively. Yep. And what they want to know is that when the business changes hands, that pattern of cash flow, whether it be growth or neutral or declining, I'm not going to buy that, but if let's say you've been growing at 10% a year, nice, but it doesn't matter, but whatever the number is, they want to know that when they buy it, if they don't do anything, that it will keep growing at 10% a year. Nothing will change. Now, if they've got that, they'll go, I'll give you a fair number for it. And the way they'll figure out the valuation is a combination of the profit and a multiplier of that profit. And the multiplier of that profit is the representation of risk. If that trend, that 10% or whatever the number is trend, is at risk, and they go, as soon as it changes hands, that if we don't do anything, that's going to change and drop, then they'll give you one or two. They'll give you a low multiple. If they go, hey, look, we're going to buy the business and that 10% is going to continue. We don't have to do a thing all day long. That owner walks away tomorrow. We buy the business tomorrow. That number continues as is, no risk. They'll pay you a lot more for that, right? Because there's no risk to their investment. Now, that's how a buyer looks at the business. They go, oh, let me look at the cash flow. Let me look at what's going to happen when the business changes hands. How risky is that? The seller's going, well, I've been working in this business for 20 years. It owes me this much. Or they're going, hey, I need this much for my pension to live the lifestyle and fund the lifestyle that I want. So therefore, I'll sell the business for this much. It's the buyer that determines value. The seller determines price. The buyer determines if they'll pay that price. And if you haven't got the price right, then you got no hope. You're dreaming. So what they need to be doing is going, let me talk to someone to get a valuation of my business, an independent valuation. Don't get a valuation from someone who wants to sell your business, because they've got a vested interest in giving you a nice seductive number. get a valuation from someone like ourselves who are not interested in selling your business. We just want to make it sellable. We'd have no role to play in the actual selling of your business. And we'll show you how to, we won't just give you a valuation, we'll give you a full insights report, which will show you, it'll go, look, here's the valuation, but that's on the last page. And we know that you always go to the last page of a consultant's report anyway. But what will it provide in the report? We'll go, we did some due diligence on your business, like just like a buyer would, but we're documenting it all here. Here's all the stuff we looked at, and here's all the answers we came up with, and here's the risk we see associated with those numbers. You know, red flag, green flag, red flag, green flag, and here it all is. And if that's a red flag and that's going to cost you, make that green, it's going to impact your valuation. And there's basically just a whole list of data there, information for you to see, because we want you to understand how a buyer's looking at the valuation of your business. Now, in that report, it'll go, based on this business of your, the information of your business today, your business would be valued at X. And now we did some research. Now, if you're operating at best practice financials, you're really efficient. You know, here's the increase in valuation. If you're already operating at best practice, you're not going to get that step of increase available. Now we go, here's all the things that you can do to improve the profitability of your business. Improve the profitability, mathematically, your valuation goes up. Now, if we started working on all the intangible side of your business and worked on the intangible assets, that's going to reduce the risk and increase the likelihood of your business growing without specific input day in, day out, because you've got all the systems, you've got all the levers to pull. Now you start working on those, and with a bit of luck as well, you'll be attractive to a strategic buyer. Now, strategic buyers are going to go, well, hey, look, I love this business. It's going to plug into our business really well. Well, it's worth more to us to buy it than to build something ourselves. So they're all the things that you want to look at to improve the valuation of your business. And this, we're talking like brand and systems and owner dependence and structures and client loyalty and staff loyalty and all these sorts of things. Any IP you've got, all the things that just make the business work like clockwork.
Do you see any specific industries that are prone to sell more often than others? Other than, I don't mean that in terms of like, listen, most AI today is just automation rebranded. That's fine. So minus trendy and hype. You know, not to say AI isn't as revolutionary as it's being said. That's not what I'm saying. But minus, I think you know what I'm saying, right? The general trends of markets. Outside of that, do you see industries that are just more prone to sell? There's always buyers. There's always interest in them than others?
Nothing comes to mind quickly, but as soon as we finish the conversation, I'll be going, I should have said that. Yeah, look, there's no business industries that come to mind that I go, restaurants, I guess, turn over, fairly often, but you always get some good restaurants and some bad restaurants. But, trades tend to hang around a while. A lot of SME businesses, there's nothing that comes to mind as a particular industry that turns over more.
Okay. So I'm going to stretch your brain a little bit on this one because it'll be from the perspective of the opposite side. From a buyer's standpoint, someone who is interested in acquisitions, a little birdie, it might be me. I'm just asking for a friend here though. But do you see when you talk to your clients, or even, obviously you guys have conversations and networking on all of this. How should someone who's actually interested in buying reach out to those owners? Like, how do you see that'll best be taken without seeming too needy, or maybe they're not even ready to sell their business and you're not in a rush, but at the same time, you're not just cold calling the front desk and getting the phone slammed on you. How do you see that it's the best received?
That's a great question. That is a good question. And because a lot of business owners, and I'm guessing this is the same in your country as well, in the States, Business owners are being approached, almost every day by someone offering to buy their business, and all too often they haven't done any research. And I'm talking brokers. Brokers just get your name from a list and they go, I can sell your business. I get them myself and I go, yeah, you've got nothing about my business. It's a standard letter. It's not relevant. And you just keep it as a souvenir because it's fascinating. So if I was serious about growing a business through acquisition and I wanted to buy a couple, I'd be looking at the businesses. I'd be doing my desktop research. I'd be using AI to help me with that research because it's damn good, and it'll just find it. And I'd get it to research Glassdoor. I would get it to look on. We use Company's House has all of the information on submitted accounts every year. I don't know what the equivalent is over there, but I'd be looking at their financial history, whatever publicly available financial history. I'd be looking at any staff turnover, appointments, growth, other acquisitions they've made. I'd be looking at their website. I've been following them on LinkedIn to get all the research and just observing what's going on. And then I would try and get their personal details because a lot of business owners they might have a PA that has access to their email. So if I could get their mobile number, I would use that, or a personal email address, which is often linked to their LinkedIn account. I would be commenting on their posts if they're active on LinkedIn, and trying to build some rapport. If not, I would approach them and go, look, this is where I'm at. I'm a similar business owner on the other side of town. I'm interested to learn more about your business, your goals, your aspirations. In other words, I'd do a soft sell first. I'd want to get to know them, like you're dating someone. Is there a future here? Are they? And the most important thing I would be looking at is, are the businesses culturally aligned? Because you're selling the same products in the same industry, but if culturally you're totally different, it's just not going to work. So I'd be looking to get to know them first and just a real soft sell, and get to know them, and and then at the right time make an informed proposal, if you like, and go, is this something you'd be open to? And that would position, I would anticipate that would position you away from everyone else as just going in for the quick and dirty wham bam thank you ma'am type of thing, to try and get a quick deal and be that pushy salesperson to try and get them over the line. But I'm not a broker, so take all of that with a grain of salt. I'm not an investment banker. That's just how I would do it. I haven't done that. I've spent my whole career, working alongside business owners, being that confidant, if you like, and helping them grow and scale their own business, mainly through organic and strategic initiatives. And when they've gone and done the acquisitions, we've just engaged an investment banker type broker to get on board with that. And they've done effectively what I just said, through their own industry, soft sell, go out there. Yeah, especially if they're buying a business in the same industry, they often already know them anyway, and they'll just have take them down the pub, take them out for lunch, or a couple of drinks, and go, you up for this or not? What are your thoughts? Where what are your plans?
Yeah, that's actually exactly why I asked, because you are on the other side so often. I can only imagine that when they do bring you guys on, you hear all of the dirty details and the venting. I get letters once a day, once every other day. I'm so tired of getting the private equity phone calls. I'm based in Nashville and they're calling me from New York, never even stepped foot in the state before. I talk to business owners too, and they almost all say the same thing. Actually, as an example, a guy with proprietary technology that I'm speaking with now, he happens to have systemized things very well, but he's 64 years old, and it was a weird chance encounter where he sells licenses for the technology, basically. And he thought he was selling me the license. And I thought that we were talking about the technology itself. And it was interesting because when I had said, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake here, and talked to the guy, well, it comes out later that it's exactly what happened. He got phone calls. They tried to throw money at him. Private equity guys. They simply wanted their 3 to 5 multiple with a return in 3 to 5 years. No care, no ifs, ands, or buts. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Meanwhile, I'm talking to this guy now because I am down to earth. I am in Nashville. I am very interested in the technology itself, and the guy's been in the industry since the 90s, right? So the same business, the same proprietary technology has not become outdated. That'll tell you everything you need to know. Surviving the .com bust, right? The 2008 financial crisis, the 2020 collapse, as the whole pandemic situation, and he's like still going, still kicking. He's been there since the beginning. Now that particular situation, the guy wants to remain involved, but more in an advisory role, right? Whereas these private equity just want the technology and they want to kick them out, and they want, like I said, they want their returns in 3 to 5 years and don't care at all, which most people who know private equity or venture capitalists is they're making their money on bulk deals where this is a totally made up statistic, but 8 out of 10 of them fail, and they don't care because they get their returns from the 2, 3, 4 that do, right?
There's a bit of that for sure. But when they roll up, they need a company to start with. And they need people to run the companies because the PE guys aren't putting people in to run the companies. So that when they're rolling businesses in, they need someone to run them still. And whether that's the two ICs, not the founders, but they don't want to get rid of all the founders. They want some on board. So there's a bit of that going on. But yeah, what I find, my style is, I'm not do it by the numbers guy. I'm not. Just because it all adds up on the spreadsheet doesn't mean it's going to work, because businesses have people involved, and people buy on feelings and energy and culture. So my approach is, and this is what I've learned over the years, and it's a bit disconnected from my engineering perspective because from that perspective I am a numbers guy. But if you have a look at it, the businesses that I've worked with over the years, of all the businesses that I've seen, those that are run purely by a CFO or run from the spreadsheet, they're soulless. They have no heart and soul, which means everything tends to happen transactionally, right? So, people are employed. Like I'll employ you because I can pay you 20 grand a year, and that gives me an extra 20 grand a year, and you're making me more dividends. It's a transaction. So when you treat people like that, they go, well, let me exploit you, and as long as I'm getting a fair deal of my whatever you're paying me, but as soon as I get bored or I no longer feel valued, I'll move on and move on to the next transaction. Businesses that are vision-led, and I'm not talking hug a tree, purpose-led, but businesses that go, this is the reason we exist. We exist because we saw a need in the market to solve this problem, and we want to solve this problem for as many people as possible. And if we solve that problem, and we solve it for lots of people, the business can look this big in 10 years' time, and that means we're helping all these extra people. And if we're helping all these extra people, by the way, we'll make money doing that. Right? So the profit is an outcome of running a good business that's purpose and vision led and has a direction, and it's finding people that are on board with where we're going and the problem we're solving, and they're aligned to your style and your values. These people are aligned. You don't have to sell them the concept. They don't have to buy in because they're already naturally aligned. So those people will work, and if with good leadership and good business practice, you'll get more out of them, not because you're leveraging and taking advantage of them. It's because they're aligned and they feel valued, and they're getting paid well and looked after, and they're making a contribution. The natural outcome is that you'll have a really well-run business. Everyone's aligned. You'll have low staff turnover, therefore a higher efficient business, and the outcome is you'll make more money.
Do you see, maybe this sounds like a stupid question, because if you get to 5 million, between 5 and 50 million revenue, you probably had a vision. But do you see the companies that you work with, or even people outside of your buy box, your client avatar, that come along that don't have that vision, that just, need to establish that culture beforehand as part as the preparation for sale?
Yeah, look, I see a lot of businesses that have just kept growing and growing and growing. And look, often I see people start a business, and this is really generic and it's empirical. So some people start a business because it's a numbers thing. I want to start a business because I want to make a lot of money. I want to be a millionaire. I want to be loaded. I want to have all this money. And some people start the business because they go, I can see a need here. There's a solution. We need to fix this problem in the marketplace. So one is cultural led, the other is commercial led. Now, what happens, 5 or 10 years after their time, and this is not conscious, I don't think, but this is what I've seen happens. After 5 or 10 years, people get stressed, they get frustrated, they get overwhelmed, and they're not satisfied, and they're not, enjoying what's going on anymore. Those that were commercial led, they've made a lot of money, and now they're just going through the motions and they're doing the same. So to fix them up and get them back on track, we need to go, well, great, you've got a commercial vision and a commercial goal. We need to overlap it and bring in the cultural goal so that you've got purpose and meaning, and you've got cultural and commercial, and then you've got a new, bigger vision and a higher, bigger picture of what you're going for. It's the same on the other side. The people who started for cultural reasons didn't have a commercial side of the equation. Culturally, they may have a great business, but they're not making any money. So, you need to bring them in. You need to fix in and have a look at the commercial side, put them together, get cultural and commercial, balance it up, bigger picture, and send them on their way. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of the fantasy world I live in that I see where the solutions are.
That totally answers my question. And then kind of like a quick follow up is, do you see most of the guys you work with, or even in the industry generally, because I'm sure you talk to more of these owners than I do, but do you see that they want to remain involved in an advisory position, or are they much more like, hey, cover my pension, I'm trying to retire, I'm done with this. By the way, separate from the motivated sellers, because most of them need to get out from things that happen outside of their control most of the time. But I mean more of the people that are kind of starting the process of getting the wheels turning.
Yeah. So there is a bit of a mix. And what we do is we break down. So when you own a business, there's 3 parts to owning a business. And we normally blend them all as one. And the 3 parts are the 3 areas that I benefit from owning a business. So I get income, I get ownership, and I get control. So control is how the decisions are made. Now, when we break those 3 down, we go, okay, let's unpack those. Let's unbundle them and see what it means. Well, the income is the salary. I get income for doing a job in the business. Everyone in the business has a job and gets an income. Ownership. Well, that means I own equity. So what is the benefit there? Well, the equity means I should be getting capital growth. My shares should be worth more, and I should be getting some dividends from owning those shares. And hopefully, I'm not having to throw money in to fund it too often. But I've got the capital growth, and I've got some. That's what I get from my ownership. Control is how a decision's made in the business. Now, when we have a look at a good, well-run best practice structure, well, that's through the board. And a board structure identifies the strategy. Now, up to about a 10, in between 10 to 30 is where this changes. But up to that 10 mil, the board are often the shareholders and are often executive in the business, and they're responsible for strategy. Between 10 and 30 is when you transition from an executive board to a non-executive board, i.e. they're not working in the business, they're fully independent, or they're outside. You may just have 1 or 2 execs in the board. And that's when the transition, because during that period, your business develops and recruits a whole lot of talented, capable senior leadership as executives in your business. So then you can hand over the strategy design or the to the leadership team to take on the strategy. And that means the board is just in control of the corporate governance and the principles and the big picture for the business. So you've got income ownership and control. Now, what we look at, we go, okay, so what's your plan? What is it you want to do for your exit plan? What if we get you out of the income, and that way you're financially out of the business. You no longer have a job in the business, but you can sit in the board. You can maybe chair the board, and that's what, once a month, once a quarter, and you can still have your equity. Now we can get you to transition out of the board where you're just a shareholder now, and you've eased your way out of the business as that advisor role, and you just own shares. And then the last exit is, well, let me sell my shares. I've sold my equity. I no longer have any involvement in the business. My name may still be on the board, on the wall. I was the founder of the business, but I've now fully exited. And what we do is we have a look at, let's break it down to those stages, and we'll see how we can do it. And that way we ease them out, and we get that transition that I think you are looking for by easing them out of the business and being an advisor. What we don't want is a business that's not exit ready, which means the buyer says, well, I'll buy your business and I'll take it off your hands, but I need you, Mr. Owner, Mrs. Owner, I need you involved in the business for the next 3 years to work through an earn out because it wasn't exit ready, because it's all in your head. I need you to transition everything over the next 3 years. When you enter an earn out agreement, you typically have no control. The buyer owns the goalposts and they can move them wherever they like. And it's just too risky for you to get all of the money that you're promised on an earn out. So that's what we want to avoid.
That makes total sense to me. It would actually, even as a buyer, it would make total sense to me why someone would want to do the earn out, not just for the obvious of help me grow this, but that other element there that you just mentioned of either the moving goalpost or even having the control while on the journey to the goalposts makes total sense to me. In terms of the journey here, I'm very sure that it's very case by case, basis, but what kind of timeline do you guys usually put together in terms of turnaround?
But often business owners come to us and go, I want to sell now.
That's always
Right.
the answer, right? Yesterday,
Best case scenario for us is 3 to 5 years. Why? Because I've referenced Gerber's book, The E-Myth, a couple of times. He talks about working on your business. Now, when you're working on your business, what it means is you're not in the operations. You're not in an operational role in the business, which means you're working on the strategies, the future of the business. When you're working in the operations, it means any work you do today, money comes in, you can pretty much invoice for your work or the time that you've done immediately, and money comes in 30, 90 days, whatever. When you're working on the business, there's no invoice. You're developing strategies, you're developing new products, you're developing new ideas, you're systemizing the business. The benefit of the work you're doing flows through to the business over the next 6 to 12 months. So you're working ahead of the business by 6 to 12 months. And if the work you've done is sound, in 6 to 12 months' time, it will start to show up on your income statement because you've sold more products, you've got more sales, you've got more client retention. That's how it shows up. Now, what you want to do is so there's a year of just doing the work before it shows up, and then you've got another 2 years to show that it wasn't just a fluke. So there's 3 years of preparation that you've got to start showing and demonstrating that the work you've done is actually beneficial and it's the right work to have done, and therefore it starts hitting your valuation. So what we need to do is we need to get business owners out there thinking about the growth and the development of their business and shifting that thinking from profit growth to valuation growth. Start thinking about what's the valuation growth from my business year to year, which is so much more than just profit growth from year to year.
Yeah, totally different mindset, right? Rather than, revenue, grow the company, employees, systems, a machine, turn it into a machine. So I just really quick, I don't want to brush over that because I did not expect you to say 3 to 5 years, right? Because I think most people, now, of course, the business owner, yesterday, right? But I think most people, before you started talking there, probably expected somewhere between, 3 to 6 months or 6 months to a year time frame. Really take that to heart, guys. If you've either started a business, bought a business, or you're thinking about selling in the future, you don't want to be on that 55%, okay, that are forced into this process, because you really want to take the time to put the years in, 3 to 5 years, to get the most out of it, to squeeze every drop out of the lemon. When somebody goes through this type of process, when somebody takes the time, they spend the time, they think a little bit longer term than they probably would like on that 3 to 5 years, what can somebody expect in terms of a multiple increase?
Yeah. Well, that's the bottom line, isn't it? So I told you that Business Insights report, that first chunk of work that we talked about earlier, and we have a look at all of the upside. What I can tell you is the average of the 800 or so that we've done, we're probably close to 1,000 now that we've done, the upside in valuation increase is 30%. Now that's based on their current revenue. It's not factoring in the additional revenue growth or profit growth that you'll make over the next 2 or 3 years. It's just looking at what's the extra profit you could get out of the current. So then you double up of 3 extra years of organic growth. So it's 30% plus. So we often go, look, we won't even have a look at working with the business unless we know that we can triple the valuation. The valuation increase is triple the fees that we'll charge.
Now, when you are evaluating a business, what are the determining things that tell you if you can do a triple, like you can triple the valuation or not? Like, what are those KPIs?
Well, we've got an idea, so we can see that valuation uplift, and that's just, as I say, that raw number on the current revenue. So that valuation uplift is what's available, and we just do a quick back of the envelope. Is that 3 times the fees we would charge them over that time period? If it is, it's something we'll look at. Otherwise, the clients, they may as well just sell their business now at not triple the price. The 30%, the 30% uplift, and just sell it now, and they're not going to be as well off as they'd want to be, but there's 3 extra years up their sleeve to go sailing or drink pina coladas.
Now, they're probably not yet in this hypothetical situation I'm going to share. They're probably not yet in that 55% of, for lack of better words, desperation. But I could imagine quite a lot of business owners come to you when it's maybe too late. And they might not be in total desperation, but they're not putting 3 to 5 years into this thing. Right. What advice, where do you send them at? You go, we can't hit that 3 times valuation, but boom, 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 boom.
Well, what we can do in 6 to 9 months is, if they're desperate to sell, there's a lot of things that you can do to tidy up their financials and help them prepare for due diligence. So we can get a whole lot of information ready and available, so at least they're not going to slow down the diligence process, and therefore a buyer have a look and go, well, you haven't got this ready. I'm just out of here. So it's not so much about increasing the valuation, it's increasing the likelihood of securing a deal. And when we, at the beginning of the conversation, we identified that only 1 in 5 sell. You want to do everything you can to make sure you're one of those, 20%.
Yeah, 1 in 5 sell. And, in terms of long-term thinking, I think in America specifically, only 1 in 11 sell within the first year. So even if you wanted to get out quick, you got about an 8% chance of actually getting out in the first year anyway, assuming you can get the number you're looking for.
So if you get an investment banker on at the same time as going, well, actually, I'd need to start knocking this into shape. You can do those things in parallel, but you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. So let's avoid that. Let's get the message out there to business owners out there. There's added benefit. If you do that, put that work in today, let's just say you've now got a strategic partner on board who's working with you to improve the valuation of your business every year. Why would you want to do that? Well, I can think of a couple of reasons. First is, we talked about those working all the crazy hours. You've got more time on your hands, you've got less stress, and your business is going to be more profitable in the interim. So every year you're exit ready, you're going to take home more money. Oh, and by the way, when you sell it, you're going to take home more money again as the upside. And that time period in between, less stressful than it is now. To me, they're all good reasons.
It sounds like a win-win in my mind. And going back to mindset of the business owner, that kind of makes the difference there. I am curious when it comes to strategic partners. What do you recommend in terms of outsourcing C-suite executives? Because I think that's relatively common these days, right? To bring on a strategic partner for a CFO services or something along those lines. Like, at what threshold do you either advise against or advise to do so? I think you briefly touched on that earlier.
Yeah, look, I think CFOs, especially, good idea. If you can get a CFO from a much bigger business, who's got experience in building and scaling much bigger businesses to work with you for a day a week, a day a month type of thing, get them on board. And I know a couple of good organizations in the States that do that. And a few good ones over here as well, obviously. So do that. When I'm going to say 2 mil revenue is about the time you want. Below that 1 mil, it's just too much pressure. Some of them will try and get on board when you're at a mil revenue, but it's probably a bit early to really be bringing in that sort of expertise. And then up to about 30 mil, depending on the industry and where you're at, is when you want a full-time CFO. And marketing, I'm a little different on. I think, 1 to 3 mil or is, yes, you want a marketing, you would definitely want to bring in the expertise of a CMO, a marketing exec. But do that with the mind of bringing in your own marketing exec full house sooner, because whilst counting the money and the strategic expertise that a CFO will bring is relatively transferable, where I see marketing and your ability to access the market and create a marketing machine and generate leads and demand for your product, that's going to become part of your core IP assets or one of your intangible assets. And you don't want them as a fractional role. You want them as a full-time in your business as part of your in-house IP and knowledge base. So get them in quick.
What's your thoughts on this new trend of everyone wanting to focus on, I'm going to put parentheses around it, passive income, and, do this and the digital assets and sell your course and sell your training? And
Well, it's the holy grail, isn't it? Recurring income, making money when you sleep and not selling your time, absolute core. And if you can do it, fantastic. If you can supplement your services with some sort of digital product that brings clients on, that eases them into your system, if you can transition your business purely from time to products, it's the holy grail. But I'm going to give a warning. Just because you can create a subscription product doesn't mean that it's a good idea. I get that recurring income is great for your valuation, and we want to lock it in the valuation. But from a client perspective, there are some things that are, I saw one the other day, like I think it was a sock subscription. Now, I don't know about you, but socks last me for years. And and maybe I'm close to that baby boomer generation where I want things to wear out before I replace them. And I know socks aren't expensive, but I don't need 12 new pair of socks every year. So I'd be on a subscription in 6 months I'm going stop. So just because you can doesn't mean you should.
I have a feeling that sock subscription is relying on you canceling, before or after 6 months because of the LTV.
Yeah, and that whole business model where they're going, well, hopefully the client forgets to see it and they don't look at the price and they forget about it. You're not exactly treating your clients fairly. And when they do come off, they're going to be pretty annoyed, and they're not going to talk. They're not going to be singing your praises. So think about all of that as well.
Definitely. So again, I want to stretch your brain just a little bit on this one here, and feel free to take time to actually think about it here. But what am I not asking you that I should be asking you?
You've been pretty exhaustive, to be honest.
I'm sorry.
Um, Look, we've covered, in my mind, see, I think in frameworks. So even though I haven't always mentioned frameworks, I've talked you through a lot of frameworks and tools that I use to go through the exit planning process. So you've pretty well, you've gone through my playbook. What are you not asking? Look, the only thing I would say is, and we've sort of touched on it, is even if you don't want to exit your business for a long time, make the mindset shift from profit growth or revenue growth to valuation growth, which means you start needing to get a valuation for your business now. And then you've got a checklist for all the things you need to do to improve the valuation of your business. Why do you want to do that? Well, we've touched on it. You'll have a better business to run. You'll make more money. You'll have less stress. And yeah, it'll be more enjoyable to run in the meantime with more time. Additionally, yeah, business owners go, my business is always for sale. And I go, well, for how much? And I go, the right price. I go, what's the right price? And they can't tell me. So it's not always for sale. But sometimes if you've built an attractive business, someone will come and approach you from out of the blue. And they'll go, look, I'm interested in buying your business. You want to be on the front foot when that occurs, because one of the biggest deal killers is when momentum slows. And momentum slows when you have to go and get the information every time they ask for it. If you're exit ready, it means you've got all the information reasonably handy, even though you're not looking to sell at any point, which means you could take the opportunity of reacting and being able to get some strategic buyer for your business. Doesn't mean you have to leave the business. You can take a job in the new business and work for them for a couple of years. I've heard of that and experienced that, seen that so many times because they were exit ready to begin with. So there's every reason to do it, no reason not to do it. The other thing that I'll just leave you with is one of the big complaints, and we haven't talked about this, is that business owners have is they go, Darryl, how do I get my employees to behave like me? I want my employees to, think like a business owner. And I go, but they're employees. They're not business owners. Why would you expect them to think like business owners? If they did, they'd be off running their own business. But there is an in-between. In the US, you call them ESOPs, employee stock option plans. There are ways to get your employees to think and act like business owners, make them business owners, open up the books, just at a headline level. You don't show them all the details, but get everyone aligned in the business to the same outcomes. And the same outcomes is valuation growth. How do you measure that year by year? Well, the easiest scorecard is the old classic profit, and that's why it's used so often. But if you get all of your employees aligned and incentivized by the same outcomes, you're going to grow your business faster.
So then that leads me to one more here that you just gave me. What's the best practices for someone to ensure there isn't mass walkaways during transition, assuming that the buyer and the new boss or whatever isn't just a total a-hole and actually wants to be there, enjoys it, and loves the industry and wants to take it over? What are some of the best practices for that?
Well, the best way is to have some sort of stock option plan like we just discussed, get everyone involved in it, and you just set up a deal and you go, look, everyone who's still with us in 12 months time, we acquire their stock. Or you just put a deal together like, that keeps them on board for 12 months so that you're encouraging them to stay around and give the new entity a chance. You treat them like grown-ups. Now, that doesn't mean you tell them that you're thinking of selling the business, because people get scared and panic. But you need to keep your key management team, but create reasons for them to stay.
And then what would be a good timeline for you? and then I'm going to let you go. But what would be a good timeline to actually tell your employees to have that kind of roundtable meeting?
Look, to tell your employees that you're selling the business is once the ink is dried, right? So the deal is done, and then this is what's happening. You've got two or three, depending on the size of the business. You've got a small people in the management team that need to be involved because they're helping prepare all the information and keeping the business going and growing. So, but yeah, look, you really can't afford, for all the right reasons, to tell employees as much as you would want to, and you've been open with them, but it just creates confusion. So you tell them when the ink is dried, and then you bring them in, you thank them, you make an announcement, but at the same time, don't give them a chance to get scared. Agree with the new owners what the opportunity looks like for them, and how they're going to keep their conditions and their benefits, and the upside opportunity for them. And often it's a bigger business buying and acquiring your business, so there's more career growth advancement opportunities for them. So yeah, there usually is an upside when it's well planned and well structured deal.
And then maybe on the buyer side, that's a big one. If there's key man risk there, providing those staff with more opportunities, whether you're bigger or smaller, like, hey, I'm going to need, X, Y, or Z to step up anyway. I would love that to possibly be you. And maybe there could be some equity in it, if the situation is right.
Look, on acquisition, the new managers want to get around and meet all the key people really quick and start building relationships.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. And from experience, that is so important. And when you do it improperly, or you start retraining people quickly, and it gets a little frantic, like I said. So, Darryl Brownsword, thank you so much for your time here. That was unbelievable. Any final things or words, or did we cover it all?
I think we've covered it, mate.
Beautiful.
We've exhausted the whole playbook.
Beautiful. Well, I really hope people will check you guys out as Succession Plus in several different countries. Like I said, Australia. I didn't mention New Zealand earlier, but the United States, the UK, you're all over the world. You guys clearly, with a buy box between 5 million and 50 million, are, dealing with some serious players. I can't stress it enough, because I do talk to some of these owners that maybe I'm not interested in buying their business because everything is in their head, to be perfectly honest with you. And I can't afford to make the mistake I have made in the past, which is buying a job rather than buying a business. And I know that almost all other buyers are thinking relatively the same thing. So do yourself a favor, plan accordingly, make it better for the buyer, get yourself a higher multiple, right? And, work with professionals that have done it
make life easier for yourself.
100%. Well, Darryl Brownsword, like I said, thank you so much for your time here.
Thanks, Quinton. It's been an absolute pleasure having a yak with you today.
Oh, yeah.